Denpa Jumden the Shinship on Dashamba Yadam. Zobe Sanje Ribada Shasun Denpa Devarishan. Jidin Jamba Jubun Deva Halo Java Lala. Pada Menam Jedamba Sanje Jumden de Beja. Shaja Tuba La Shazano Chuda Yazuchi. Denpa Jumden the Shinship on Dashamba Yadam. Zobe Sanje Ribada Shasun Denpa Devarishan. Jidin Jamba Jubun Deva Halo Java Lala. Tada Menanje Damba Sanje Jumden de Beja. Shaja Tuba La Shazano Chuda Yazuchi. Dhamma Jumden de Shinsheba Dashamba Yanda. Zobe Sanje Ribada Shazun Dhamma Devari Sheba Jiden Jim. Jivon Deva Halo Java Lana Meba Lada Mena Yedu. Sanje Jumden de Bejawa Shaja Tuba Chazi. Chuda Jazu Chewo Kaze Kanye Zobo Jadu. Sajen de Nakomban Dumbrune Lale Jiden de Najoji. Teze Keba Jona Cha Celo Namda Kunga Chodu. 一些家族世界通报者查办节点什么我们专业讲了查在罗先生电报正面的山东查我讲了查在罗的这觉得是不是么两面天线讲了查在罗广播推荐的他们这前面电报部说那么远点讲你先想了查在罗大边的下程因为俺说来这些制度的那么少就我是就讲了查 全年全员狼牙的拉巴达拉拉的内先给当把一点，年年狼牙查在罗的我这样没事，给我配送说把些让给省的样子，天天上街电把也干嘛让给妈妈，给妈说吧，去不是他没那么老大见的，这些像那么的这个大说那么的也他们这些，可望他们军检查对的，搞到拿到7月那个，7月做人做完就我这说。
To the teacher, the blessed one, the noble beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of beings to eternity, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer whom the shepherd led, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one God, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer whom the shepherd led, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one worthy beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shepherd land, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When those supreme among humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then I prostrate. With the pure body's form supremely pure, wisdom motion like golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds I love. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to dustness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower others, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community attending the virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly, This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flammable lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or bottle, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the flow of loss, and be delivered from motion of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. I go for refuge and telling my life to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other professions, may I quickly attain the state of the Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and telling my life to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving and the other professions, may I quickly attain the state of the Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and telling light to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Zobe sanje riba dan shazun tenpan devari shepan jiten jema jibun diba kano jiba lanam. Tada menan je tenpa sanje chumden deso, dishin shepa tena sonam tabi gyutun. Gewe zawa nama chu meseba sebe rabdo jemba sonam je tere nam jishi. Peche sambo nam je jeba tsenam je medo jeba juyo remba tenpa tonam midimba meba tebe meba nam. Ngombar gawa sherab si je medoba tonam zeba meba simje tamji je tenpa. Chanju semba namje yabo pabe kansa na jijebo nyangane debo chuje dan rupa na jitebo. Yesheba do mebo boba samje mejebo sonamba tabo yanyembo kuje tabe cho mejo. Kutsumba mebo deba tabe magobo su tabe nyewa magobo su mebo tata majo. Dungan na namba juba pumbo tanda namba juba kamna nambe deba keja na namba duju. Deba nama shido juba yonzo dunga tanda namba juba siba no juba chuwa lo yebo. 이제 조조반 대바다 맞음바다 다들 준비 산재 좀 된데 이제 시험 내야 냥에는 대발라 맨데바 양다바디니 타라니 심제 탐제라 시베 살아주고 대단해 산재 좀 된데 이제 구체베냐데 양다바 남아서 타베천 도망게 바다게 도망게 대해서 뭐좀 줘서 뭐 만제 뭐 영동도 뭐 영도 뭐 영도 차원 양다바 도망 내면 규체반 매면 와죠 대동안의 대여가 개발된 소소라며 지금까지 점년대 제가 수배 전도와는 내버튼 녀버저와 조배 자주 던져와 지고 메든바 메든 되고도 템바 유고 주고 제고 태바치 백일은 내가 주고 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 타고 주고 템바 주고 템바 주고 요도 주고 차주고 요도 소나게 베지신 유연소 정원 주고 집에도 주고 군도원 집에도 주고 전부 관계에 도전해서나 다와탄 제반 베자 다베천도 Kodam Tala Chatselo. So we are on the page 233.
The top page.
Top page. Okay. Top page. So then I read from 2032. The text says, overcome as they are by ignorance, sleep. Tritikas postulate a self as with things imagined as real owning to illusions, mirage, and the like. This has no existence even according to the world. Overcomes as their ignorance sleep. Tritikas. So it's non-Buddhist schools. In Tibetan we say Mutikpas. Mutikpas. Here the Mutikpa. Mu is the end. That I think represent the liberations. Tekpa means by lifting. We're trying to reach the liberation by physically then lifting up. So, not with this. So, Tirthikas. Because I think it's the kind of nickname because the non-Buddhist school, the Hindu traditions. So when the morning when they take showers, they sit on the tool and take shower by reciting the mantras. This is purifying negativities by kind of showering, taking a bath. So this is just give a name. You are trying to reach liberations by sitting on the tool. So, so these people they overcome as they are ignorant sleep. So therefore they superimpose the self as Atma and then permanent and unitary, right? Permanent and pervasive. The self is Atma, something that is independent, that that never change. So so that's kind of the one side they believe that the self or Atma is permanent, unchanged, right? So it has no nature of changing. So only changes the physical body and the feeling, the perception can change. Atma never change. So, and then another side, with faith, with devotion toward the Vishnu or the Shiva, and they also kind of aspire to change that Atma, ordinary Atma, to the liberated Atma. So there's already the contradictions. The Atma cannot be changed, and then with devotions, they're asking the Bhagavan to change me, change Atma to the liberated, right? So all these years and centuries, thousand lives, your body has changed, your feeling has changed, your perception is changing, but the Atmas never change. So the how can, right, all this kind of countless life that never change, now you want change the Atma to the Paramatma, through the devotions towards the Bhagavan. So that's why they call Tirthaka. You are trying to reach the liberations, by taking bath or the empowerment, fasting, and devotion to the Bhagavan. So you still hope this Atma, eventually change. So so to overcome as they are ignorant sleep. So therefore, out of ignorance, they think the self or Atma is something independent and permanent. As with the things imagined, the real owing illusions. So illusions, mirage. So the very existence of the self is like illusion-like phenomena, or mirage-like phenomena, or mirror image-like phenomena. So this has something that illusionally existing, and then conceiving that is a concrete, solid, permanent natures. And this has no existence even according to the world. Even the world has not even conventionally is possible. So Tirthikas, the overcome by the ignorant sleep, their mind is suffer from impairment by the inferior philosophical tenets, the false logic, and because of the arising or disintegrations,
that even the philosophically untrained, like, coward, unlearned, like, and woman, and so on, acknowledge. Instead, out of their desire to surpass ordinary people of the worldly perspective, they are like someone climbing a tree who lets go of the lower branch before the grabbing onto the next. So they will suffer great fall into a abyss of the inferior philosophical views, because they are divorced from the perfect visions of true truths. They will not obtain the resultant liberations. Therefore, the self postulated by these upholds of the extreme view as found in their individual treatises, characterized by three attributes: the eternals, unitary, and invisible. Indivisible, indivisible, does not exist even on the level of worldly conventional truth. So, as I mentioned, last time I said, this is how the attribute, the source, or kind of the origin of the samsara. So, origin of the samsara, or the origin of the suffering, is something they imagine. There's some kind of general primary substance, primal substance, right? Yeah. So that is the primary substance is built from, here it says eternal, unitary, and indivisible. The three attributes that constitute or establish the primary substance, which is the origin of our suffering, origin of our illusions, delusions. So, which means that the suffering that we are going through are not, there's something to do with between Bhagavan and between you and Bhagavan. There's some kind of primary substance there, and that constantly, throwing the things that you get confused and not to get liberated. So, which means we are busy kind of engaging in the color, sound, smell, taste, and the textures, and then, concepts. So these are all, provided or produced by the primary substance. So that obscure you to see the liberation, or to see the Bhagavan. So, and then three attributes to establish the primary substance are, and in Tibetan we call duls. Dul is the particles. So sometimes we call universal particles. And some Tantrayana terms they use space particles. So that is which means the particle means things that are moving. Things that are moving. And dul, mimba means, and then, ignorance, or the, obscurations. And then the nyingtop means, the indivisible means, there is some kind of, nyingtop is some kind of power or encouragement, which means that represent the Atma, the person in the between of these confusions and things that are moving. And then these three are the attributes, right? Yeah. So from these three, there is Bhagavan, and between you there's a primary substance. So now you have to, in order for attain the liberations, you have to, deal with this primary substance. And then how do you deal with primary substance? By generating concentrations, and then, concentrations and the devotions that, you will generate some kind of, clairvoyance or the clear visions that can directly see it as a primary substance. Once you are able to see that directly, like eye to eye, and then this primary substance will shy away. So it will just go away from you. So never coming back to you. So which means now you are, you can merge into the Bhagavan. So you become the Bhagavan.
You used some term a few minutes ago. You used the term production, that things are, if I heard correctly, that the primal substance has the capacity to produce, and only by this kind of, it seems you're linking production to things like clairvoyance and concentrations and what's produced by that. And I wondered if the idea of production here is different than the Buddhist idea of production, and if so, how can we compare those two notions of production, or are they the same?
Within the Samkhya schools, there's, as I mentioned, two two types of Samkhyas. One believe that primary substance is no different from the Bhagavan himself. And then another says, no, this is nothing to do with Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is not responsible for the creation of this universal. Bhagavan is not the creator. And then, the question is, the both believe there is a primary substance that generally exists out there, and that is the source of our, source of the producing the color, sound, smell, taste, and all kind of, concepts, like in general and particulars, and then virtues and non-virtues, and then dharma and non-dharmas. These are all, produced by the universal, their primary substance. So that kind of, influence us to believe. So there's a color, it's separate, the sound, the smell, the taste, something that's, and then what they think is, this whole, the creation of this, color, sound, smell, taste, textures, and the concepts are, in the reality, there is nothing. It's all like stuff things. It has no essence. There's no essence in color. There's no essence in sound and smell and textures and then virtues, non-virtues, the general and the particulars. So all this just can they from the general substance produce for you to get confused, get busy with that. So the way the producer productions is there's no different definitions from the Buddhists. Produce means the general substance is the main cause that produces this color, that produces the sound, that produces the smell and textures, that produce you to believe there's the virtue and non-virtues, right? Dharma and non-dharmas. There's a race, color in the high class and low class. So all just created by the primary substance. So when you are getting busy in that, this object, and you cannot achieve the liberations. So this is what they think. So
kind of like the Buddhist view of ignorance.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. So Buddhist, I think there's some kind of, we have a common belief that is ignorance is the source of the samsara, right? Ignorance is the samsara. Now, why you are confused, what you have this ignorance. And then Buddhist says, just because the mind, your mind has no ability to understand the reality as it is. And this is no, your mind is just played by this primary substance. Therefore, you have ignorance. So your ignorance is, so you are deceived by the primary substance. The Buddhist says we deceived by our own ignorance, our own, the inability to understand the reality. So I think that within the Samkhya, the Samkhya who believes in the creators, I think there's more when you compare to the Samkhya school who not believing in the creators, then the Samkhya believe in the creator has more sense than the no creator. So Samkhya who believe in the creators, they says the primary substance is nothing but the Bhagavan himself. He himself manifests as the Maya, as a magician. He kind of create the net so that you caught in there. So Bhagavan is the cause for you to caught in samsara. And then we ask why Bhagavan is doing that. So then says, the Bhagavan wants you to be stronger. So, yeah. So this like, so you can take a chicken. So, they inject you.
Yeah.
I mean, in Dzogchen, they talk about Buddha nature is primordial. So it sounds quite similar, actually, that they put the label of Dzogchen on something, on a primordial wisdom. So here they're calling it not primordial wisdom, they're calling it a being. But actually, it sounds not so different. Then you could ask, what the being? Well, being, you could say the being is like wisdom, primordial wisdom. It's a little bit different terminology, but also I'm a little bit confused here because you said that those who believe in like this primordial being, that's more accurate than those who don't explain things in terms of a primordial being. You said there's two schools of Samkhya, and it sounds like your view is that those who see it as a primordial being are more sophisticated than those who don't recognize the primordial being. Why do you think that? Why do you think that's a more sophisticated view? I would have thought the other would be more sophisticated.
Okay.
The other simply doesn't label.
Yeah.
Doesn't use label.
So that's good. That's good. Maybe others cheaper, so easy to buy. So one that has to go through the online, you have to submit something. So
Actually, the primordial being generally seems more attractive to most people.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It depends maybe on the historical time.
Yeah, I think normally people are, they get easily attracted in lie. So the truth is always, they always try to avoid it. So that's why, we have, from the religions and from the politicians, so easy to manipulate people. So people are more attracted to the lie. So truth is hard. There's not much taste in truth. Lie has more taste. So I think here both is not really making sense, but so what I'm saying, the Samkhya who believe in the Creator, the Bhagavan, is the responsible for creating all human beings and the whole planets. So in the story in this non-Buddhist school, there's this kind of story they made the stories. So they're called, in a female form, it's the Bhagavan in the female forms, and she's what the function of that female is to make you confused, to forget things, and you get trapped in something like relations or monies or properties. So this kind of a thing. So a female, her job is to to make you kind of trapped in something. So I think that's the part of the primary substance is no other than that Mahamaya. So Mahamaya is the kind of in the form of female. So the Bhagavans, and there's a story during the Krishnas. Krishna, when Krishna was a very little baby, so mother's giving him milk, and the Krishnas, he's like maybe 3 months. So when the mother gives the milk, and that triggers the eternal kind of what you call the ultimate bliss in the Krishna, and that influence to the mothers. Mother almost got liberated at the time when she was giving milk, because the baby was Bhagavan. So baby enjoy, and he develop some kind of great bliss in him, that light radiates go through the mothers. So mother almost enlightened there. And then the main Vishnu has to send his emanations to, to veil her, to confuse her. Otherwise, and whole his, story to play in the futures will stop if mother knows he is Bhagavan. So the Krishna has to send the Mahamaya. It comes to the Vishnu has to come in form of the Mahamaya, and then turn the whole time backward, and she become ordinary. so mother almost become enlightened, and the Vishnu turn the time backward, and she still remain ordinaries. So there is between, it is the Bhagavan himself, but he is another form of that. The Bhagavan is to confuse, to to obscure their mind. So maybe he says, not now. Yeah, so that's kind of, if the Bhagavan is, and if he has the reason, he wants you to be, and put more time and more effort, more study and accumulation of merit before you become the Bhagavan. So this mother is, just by giving milk to the baby and she got enlightened, that's unfair. So it's not, that's too too easy for. Anyway, that's yeah. One reason is the so some schools who not believing in the creators still believe there is something out there is responsible for our, you know, uh, you know, the, being caught in samsara. So not yourself is doing, it's something out there, primary substance. So I don't know what's the background of that idea. Maybe those Samkhya schools thinks that once everybody when they reach the nirvana or moksha, and everything become one. Like the waters, there's a different rivers, right? The water flows in the different rivers, and eventually goes into the oceans, become one. So the liberation is, once the individual liberate and you become one with Bhagavan, and my friends, my enemy, all become the Bhagavan. We all become one, finally. So, and that maybe that idea is, if there is something that causing us to be caught in samsara, that is also one. So from one to everybody caught in samsara, when everybody become one, and then all become the Bhagavan.
Again, this sounds very Buddhist, because I'm going to kind of be devil's advocate here, because those who are our enemies are described as our greatest teachers, and then at least one account, I don't know if all accounts, that the Buddha's enlightenment was that when the Buddha became enlightened, everything became peaceful. Cows, everything. Suddenly it was wrapped up into this great enlightenment. It seems like when there's a great being, sometimes it seems to affect the whole environment around there. And you can say, yeah, this is, again, very similar, like becoming one. There is no longer a labeling process of the good and bad. Everything is beyond the label and beyond the dualism. And of course, in Buddhism might say that you can't say it's one, you can't say it's many, because there's no labeling whatsoever. But I think the description is not that different here, it seems to me. It seems to me more a different terminology than the essence. The essence still is talking about emptiness, and it seems to be talking about how things appear, and people getting caught in the delusion of appearance. And in Buddhism, we have the thing about merit. So when you talk about the story with Krishna and his mother, oh, it was too easy. Maybe you can say, oh, she didn't have enough merit. You could, want to put Buddhist terms to it, you could relabel it, oh, well, she didn't have enough merit at that point. So to me, it's kind of, seems to me deceptively different, but not essentially different.
Yeah. So if you don't use the logic, and then just the concept, and everything seems, sometimes everything seems alike, sometimes everything's totally different. So there's no reason to, there's no reason, you have no reason or logic why you see everything's alike. because I feel, because this concept says this concept, oh, I feel this is alike. And also says, if I have some kind of emotionally, some detachment, some kind of ideas, oh, everything is totally different. So to feel, alike, to feel independent or difference, just because your feeling is same, it's not logically, it's not logical approach, right? So right now, so liberations means, yourself, your mind is free from the afflictive emotions. The freeing afflictive emotions is, without the realizations, you cannot set free your mind from the afflictive emotions. The afflictive emotions is illogically, right? Is, kind of, attached to the mind, because everything's that is, by feelings, everything with feeling, everything with assumptions, then that really sustains the negative emotions within the mind. So it's based on the confusion, based on the misconception. So something that is the afflictive emotion that, attached to the mind because of the misconceptions. So to free the mind from the afflictive emotions, you have to generate the realizations, right? So realizations, now what is ignorance? What is What is the real? And what called realizations? What is ignorance? Then it says ignorance to what? Ignorance to object that every day you engage, the color, sound, smell, textures, and then concepts. These concepts, not knowing as it is the ignorance. And that ignorance is become the root, or it is the one that sustains all afflictive emotions within the mind. So it's not because this cannot be removed just by pleasing the Bhagavan, by having strong devotion towards the Bhagavan. So how much, of your faith in the Bhagavan, if you don't use the wisdom, Bhagavan cannot come to you saying, I'm going to separate your afflictive emotion and mind. So Bhagavan has no power. Even the Buddhist, Buddhist says, I cannot remove your suffering with my hand. And I cannot wash your negativities by pouring the water on you. I cannot also transfer my realization into you. So only I can do is I can show the path that you can, follow that path and you can achieve the liberations. So now here they're saying that Bhagavan is the responsible for your caught in samsara, and Bhagavan will be, right? So will be the condition that he will set you free from the afflictive emotions. So now he is the both. He is the, root cause of you're caught in samsara, and he is the one, only he decide, and he kind of, your liberations. So I'll just I'll do the puja and please the Bhagavan and keep the devotion to him, and then do my job, doing things and sitting, sleeping and continuously, sustain that faith, that devotion to the Bhagavan. And then we cannot ask, there's no express, right? So when we apply the passport visa, there's an expedited. Huh? Expedited. So we cannot apply any application to the Bhagavan. Says, please let me go first. I'll pay more, right?
Okay.
So
I'm going to be stubborn again. I'm going to be stubborn
yeah.
because I want to bring up Virupa, who was one of the great, I think it was 5 founders of the Tsongkapha. And Mirupa was a very great abbot. He was considered by all his peers as a very great master and a great scholar. And when he was in his 60s, he felt like a complete fraud, that everyone respected him, but they had no realization whatsoever. And he threw his mala into the toilet, and he was about to completely give up. He thought he had fooled everyone because he was thought to be a great scholar. And I think it was Tara who appeared with him to him and suddenly appeared and told him to pull his mala out of the toilet, rinse it off, and she would be his teacher. And it's reported in the Sakya tradition that each day she taught him for like 10 successive days, and he achieved a bhumi each day, a new bhumi. And then he started inviting women up to his room, and they threw him out of the monastery, and he became a great enlightened wandering yogin who was breaking all these conventions. But why I'm bringing this story up, because I accept that he was this extraordinary being, and yet his scholarship didn't seem to quite do it. Maybe it accumulated a lot of merit. But then it seemed almost like, I don't know how, I'd be curious how you interpret this, that the last 10 days when she taught him, he achieved a bhumi a day, and it seems she took him beyond all the kind of conceptual thought. And of course, the way the story is told, it sounds like it was being external to him. Almost, you could say, like the Bhagavat. You could put, if I wanted, I could easily put the label, she was a Bhagavan who taught him. So I'm bringing this up because it seems, at least superficially, a very different view than what you're communicating right
Yeah, I always follow the reasonings. So there's when I was little, I very very exciting in those listening stories. Then later on, I noticed that many of those stories are just mundanely told. So there is no actual story that happened. So when I read the book, so many of the stories are not true. But sometimes we call it like to entertain the audience, that sometimes the lamas tell this kind of stories. Naropa story, I read the book in the Naropa stories. There is no story like that. Naropa's book and his biography or story, Naropa was the great Pandit in Nalanda. And he has some kind of, the pride. So pride that he thinks that he knows all the sutras. So in his dream, there is the Dakinis that appears and shows some kind of, Tantrayana book. So she said, "Have you read this? You know about this?" And she said, I never heard it. I never saw it. And then another book she shows, "Have you read this? Do you know this?" Then that countless the book he hasn't studied, and he has no knowledge about it. So then that really kind of what call overcome his pride. Because before he thought he knew all the sutras, all the Buddhist teaching. So then this Dakini, told Naropa, so if you wanted to fully gain knowledge, right, and then you have to leave the monasteries, and then to follow the Telupas, so one of the masters. Telupas right now, he kind of lives in the Dharamsala and the Pathankot. Between there's a small village on the mountain, and down the village there is a big river. So there is Telupa who lives in a small cave, by the river. So Telupa, the village people consider him as just, madman. So he has no really reputations, no kind of respected personally. People think he's just a beggar. So Telupa lived in that cave. So the Dakini told Naropa, just follow this teacher. So Naropa left the monasteries and went to the Telupa. And Telupa changed his whole his realizations, and whole his, whole look. So the Telupa is not wearing monk's robe, and he has no decent clothes. It's just, and then Naropa followed him. That's how he become a great, saint. So there are many exaggerations the men told story about. So there is no, some of those panditas, great pandit, like, eventually they become like ascetic life. There's Nagopa, Telopa, Naropas, and many great, like 80 great ascetic. So these are all, so when I was little, I was also told that, teacher tell a story about Asanga's stories, how he spent retreat in the cave. And then teacher says, so while he is in the cave doing the retreat, and he split, just like slavas, all everywhere. And then one day he had a direct vision of the Maitreya Bodhisattvas. And so Maitreya Bodhisattva wearing monk's robe, and everywhere he's in the robe, there's his what do you call spit. Yeah, his spit on the robe. And so the Maitreya says, "You just did this. I was there day you started the retreat. You just keep spitting." So these are just because the teacher want us to not spit. That's the only reason. It's not there's original story. There is no such thing. So that at the time the teacher says, "Don't spit around the class," right? So he was just kind of exaggerating.
Yeah.
So there's some reason and some purpose, like to telling us not to do that. But in the real story, there is no Asanga spitting everywhere. So yeah.
Gives more power to the no spit
Yeah.
rule.
So yeah. You cannot just take everything literally. So maybe this at the time is something the teacher had this kind of mind, thought comes in mind. Maybe I should, if I tell this, they will be kind of, better. If it may help people. He just added.
Yeah, I don't know, because of course there's also the story about the Sangha that he was meditating for many years, and he saw he was about to give up, and then he saw a yogin with a feather trying to wear down a rock, and he thought that the kind of message of the story is he saw this guy was so persistent to try and accomplish something, and he went back in retreat. And there was another thing with a needle. I forget the part with a needle. And he went back and he meditated many years. So he was about to give up 2 times. And the 3rd time he was about to give up, he saw an old dog with maggots. And he felt such compassion for the dog that with his tongue he licked the maggots off of the dog, and because it kind of ignited his compassion, and the dog turned into I'm not sure if it was Shinrei Zeke or who, I don't remember. The dog turned into an enlightened being, and he said, "Where were you all these years?" And this dog, who was no longer a dog but an enlightened being, said, "I was there all the time, but you didn't have the compassion to see me." And then this is at least how this story goes. He looked around and he said, "Well, what about other people? Do they see you?" And there was only one woman. I think he appeared as a dog again, and there was an old woman carrying around the dog. She had some
No.
recognition that
The woman was, is a what do you call alcohol seller. She makes the alcohol and sells alcohol. Yeah, this is too much kind of,
You think this is mythology?
Yeah, it's mythology. It's mundane comment to just, and then as I mentioned, the Krishna stories, they are all same. So mother giving a milk and she almost got enlightened. So these are all kind of, religiously mundane comment, and there's to boost the faith in the Bhagavan.
But is the difference being Buddhist stories like with the Sangha is to boost faith in practice.
Yeah, and you see in the Bodhisattva stories there, if for example, if you're going to enlighten in the morning, like 2-3 o'clock, and before that, and there's many ladies they coming dancing to it. These are just is the projections, and then it has some meaning. Means just before you got enlightened, so there's all the imprints, the habituations from the afflictive emotions, they sparkles. So they just, idea is from that, the habituations, it just keep, what do you call, popping up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they create the, imaginations, or maybe, so if you have a habit from the attachment, there's maybe beautiful ladies coming and dancing towards you, or the angers, the habit, and then that manifests in the form of, many, maras and the, evils, they, trying to harm him. So if that is really true, the Buddha has to mention, I saw this. So there is no such things the Buddha has told, but we says, so this is how Buddha got enlightened. So, just before enlightened, he defeated all these beautiful ladies and all the devils. So, yeah. So that really, these are the very religious comment. This is called religion. Yeah. So, so that's very, very religion. Yeah. So logically, we think that we are thinking about trying to understand the possibility of liberations, nirvana. So the liberation nirvana is liberating what? Liberating mind, liberating from afflictive emotions, liberated to nirvana or enlightenment or arhat, right? So the afflictive emotions, how can this be eliminate or overcome by just putting faith or devotion towards the Bhagavan or the Buddha? How can this be afflictive emotions that is really uh, sustained and how is that what do you call it? Afflictive emotions that and attached within the mind is not because of that you have not enough faith, not enough compassion, not doing enough generosity. So that with generosity, with faith, sometimes, so it can, increases the anger, attachment. So how can this devotion towards the Bhagavan or the Buddha and compassion to the sentient being can remove anger and attachment? Because there's no direct the opposition. They are not directly opposite. So attachment and the compassion is not really directly opposed. You can do compassion because you have attachment, right? So the compassion is not directly opposed to the attachment. And the compassion also not directly opposing the anger. So when you have compassion sense towards your relations or your friends or any people, so because of you have compassion, if someone by thinking in your mind, no need someone physical harm to them, just by thinking he may harm, he is harming, he will be harming, just by thinking that generates the anger. So the compassion not direct opposed to the anger, compassion not direct opposed to the attachment, and nor the compassion, nor the devotion is directly opposed to the anger and attachment. So we need some kind of remedy with antidote that could remove that afflictive emotions by something that is directly opposed. So the wisdom is the only way. Realization of emptiness is the only way to overcome, to reduce, to eliminate, to remove, right, all the afflictive emotions. So in the religious kind of comment, there are many things. Someone putting hand, a great saint, put the hand on your head, and then you got liberated. So, and then there's a story of the, like we were told that in this Milarepa stories, one of the disciples of the Milarepa, he has kind of, gained some kind of high realizations, like especially the concentrations. He can meditate, single point to meditate for a week without any interrupt. So when he offered this knowledge, or this realization to the Milarepa, and then we were told that the Milarepa says, and he's just snapped. And by snapping, all his concentrations disappears. Mm-hmm. And then you have to begin you have to start from the scratch. So that's better. So how can he just doing that and he's all the mental qualities disappears? So this is just this kind of this comment is to praise the Milarepa. That much he has the power. Just by doing that, he will just destroy everything, and and just by putting his hand, and he just become enlightened. These are, so we have to be careful. Those, sometimes if you take literally all the religious comment, and there are many, illogical comment.
Well, where do you place Nundro in all of this? Do you look at Nundro as being based on logic or based on superstition? Let's make it very simple by asking it this way. Do you see Nundro as just a kind of a religious thing not based on understanding, that is really not sufficient to do much of anything? Because, of course, some lineages, nature lineages emphasize Nundro. It seems maybe quite a bit that, and they also might emphasize something like Tonglen. Tonglen, I don't think you have to say is based on logic to do it. I don't think you need logic to do Tonglen. So if we take Tonglen and Nundro, do you see it as useless without logic, or do you feel, or you view it as having some kind of effect? How do you, what is the basis of its, does it
Everything.
work, and does it have any basis?
Logic is not necessarily go with everything. For cooking, farming, there's no need logic. And, the Ngondo is just usually called preparation, preliminary practice. Preliminary practice means, preparing physically, verbally, mentally. Preparing for what? Preparing to be able to understand the teaching of the Buddha. Preparing physically, mentally, verbally, and, kind of make it more positive, more focus in the study and gaining realizations. This is the Ngondo. Ngondo is preparing yourself. There's many distractions, many, your kind of, verbal have some influence in your distractions, the disturbance. Your physical is very much, influenced with disturbing the distractions. Your mind is constant, going after the image and things. So preparing yourself to, to subdue, to discipline. So discipline is not only essential to discipline and follow this, the Buddha's teaching. So Ngondo, that's why it's a preliminary, So, what do you call it? You do the exercise, right? People who's running, before they start running, race, they just keep warm up. So this is like that. So logic is, it's not necessarily in everything. Doing the prostrations, no need logic.
But some emphasize Nundro, like Patro Rinpoche said. Some masters emphasize the advanced practices. I emphasize the Nundro, and I'm not trying to challenge you, by the way. I'm just trying to see how all of this fits together. Like we don't really discuss Nundro. We focus on the logics. So is one more important than the other? Is one preliminary to the other? How does this fit together?
No, what I'm saying is the logic is important, because if you really want to know the possible liberations, so you have to use the logic. Without logic, you cannot, you cannot understand the liberations. You can speak of the liberations, so you cannot understand, concept of the liberations. So when you say the logic is needed, we are not saying the preliminary is not needed. So we need all of them, methods, preliminaries, the methods, the wisdoms, memorizations, everything is needed. But to see the liberations, to understand the liberations, only logic, only logic is the way. No faith, no compassions. You cannot, right, understand the possible liberations. The possible liberation is to see the possibility of overcoming the afflictive emotions. So without the logic, you cannot, there is no way you can understand the possibility of removing the afflictive emotions. So this is why it's not saying everything is logic has to apply in every practice. It's not necessary. Without logic, you can with devotions you can generate a generosity, patience, concentration, the disciplines. You can do that, but to understand the liberations. So number three, there's only one gateway to see the liberations is the emptiness. So for that you need the reasoning and logic. So the prayers, the rituals, the sadhanas, these has a lot of beneficial, because the Buddha's dedications, his 3 eons, the merit to each sentient beings without exceptions. So, and he has given us this merit that he has accumulated. So for you to use, now you have to make yourself, to find the access into his accumulation of merit. And so faith that is the one that opens the door, opens the account, the dedications of the merit for you. You can open by your faith, your compassion, your discipline, But to experience, to kind of experience the beneficial of Buddhist dedications is not going to help you to find the liberation. This is like your parents before they pass away, and they leave all these properties and the monies, the wealth for the kids. Now, so the kid can use those things to buy things, to buy things, to wear things, to eat things. But this is not necessarily they will be happy forever. To be happy, you have to, build your talent, your kind of skill, the way you use those kind of, the wealth. So then maybe you will be more successful, more, more confidence. Just by having those, inherited, the positions, is not going to help you to be confident and happy. So yeah, so I'm still, so these days in India, there's not much people who really, what do you call, propounder of Samkhya schools, and then Charvaka school. Yeah, Charvaka schools, is not, Samkhya school and the, what do you call, Ripachama. So Ripachama, and there are I saw many great non-Buddhist schools, philosopher from Vedantaka. but no Samkhya school. But the Samkhya school is source of all the non-Buddhist school. So first, the philosophical is the Samkhya school. Then from the Samkhya, and then there are many, followers, and many tenets. Right? So when I try to understand what is the primary substance, and then they use the primary substance is something that is when you manifest from three factors, and then this is the doulos, means particles, so which represent the motions, kind of physical moving, and Mumba is the confusions, and then there's the Nyingtok is the kind of courage. Sometimes it's also desire. So which means the self of person, Atma. Atmas with desire, Atmas with greedy, Atmas with never satisfying. So never satisfying Atma is there, and then the confusions with the Atma, and things are constantly changing in there before their mind, right? Colors changing, sounds changing, smells and textures, all the concepts, right? The changing, keep changing. Now, so these three factors is from that basis, this is there must be primary substance. Because this Atma is there is no limit of desire for Atma. So Atma want every day, not satisfied with anything. And then this Atmas is anything they goes after, they're trying to gain something, and out of ignorance, confusions. And then the things they are trying to reach are, flickers, change all the time. So now who is doing this? So then it's a primary substance is playing with you. And things that you see, things that you smell are like stuff, no essence. And then you understand that all these concepts and the sensual objects are no essence. It's just projected by the primary substance. And then the primary substance is now, the primary substance that now he recognized me. I better go away from that. Then and then you are liberated because you have no general substance to confuse you. So then this is now what is that liberations? And then the Samkhya who believe in the creator says, no, now you become the Bhagavan. You are inseparable with Bhagavan. And the Samkhya who is not believing in the creator says, now you remain with consciousness without object. So there is a consciousness that experiences no object to engage, no object to conceive, no object to apprehend. Because the objects that before that you are engaged and perceived are, played by or projected by the primary substance. Now he is no longer with you. Now your consciousness is without object. So again, when you say, are you sure this Atmas, the liberated Atmas, has the consciousness? And then we ask, if there is the consciousness, is the consciousness is different from the Atma, or Atma is the consciousness? Then they says, or they change the answer. Maybe there is no consciousness. Right? When the Atma experiences there's the consciousness, the Atma alone is the liberations. So they keep changing because each question when you raise, and they have to change. They have to, step back. So which means there is this just is not logically established the concept of the liberations is invalid reasoning. So from the beginning, you have a mistake because you believe this Atma is independent and then it's a permanent. Because you say it's independent from what? Independent from your eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, mental consciousness, independent from your body, and independent from, sound, smell, taste, textures. So then how this Atmas is totally like apple and orange, with color, with smell, taste, textures, with body, with feeling, with perceptions. It's totally different, independent. And this Atmas is independent from the consciousness. How can this experience the liberation? So there is invalid reasoning. And they both, again, in this two Samkhya, they both believe the liberations, your future liberation is with you right now. So each sentient being has their own liberations above their head. It's shaped like a white umbrella and white like a pearl. So yeah, there's something. So each person wears, with umbrella is just going. So you're just out of ignorance. You don't see that umbrella. This is pretty. Yeah, it's more like Spider-Man stories. Superman, Spider-Man, Batman stories. And also, this Hindu philosophies, Hindu's concepts, and I'm sure this has so much influence within the follower of the Buddha's teaching. The Buddhists must have influence. The Buddhists are, so the culture that you will live. So that this is, how's that? Vastly and influence every people and the people who in that cultures. So some of the the Brahmins who follow Bodhisattva Muni's teaching, and they also have some kind of their own projections. They try to understand the Buddha's teaching and they want to bring their culture into that. Like in Tibet, we have Pön traditions. The Pön always insist to really, to merge in the Buddhist teaching. I'm sure then the Buddha's Buddha teaching in the West and the West culture also, are very much, integrating. So when it comes to understanding liberations, there is no culture has as a space. There's no tradition has space. There is no in any conventional idea can influence in the ultimate nature, because it's beyond reach of conventional, beyond reach of the concept. So sometimes the projections or postulations about the self. So the contradiction is very, very, very clear and very obvious. But because of their faith in the Bhagavans, devotions, they don't see that as the obvious thing. So Atma is independent, unchanged, cannot be, never has changed by the cosmic conditions. And with devotions, they believe this Atma will one day and become the Bhagavan. So how it is possible? Things that has never changed, and then because of the devotions, it will change to ordinary Atma, to the Paramatma. So in the Prasangika schools, the concept and the concept, the conceptually constructed entity and the existence. So there is no any entity or existence beyond conceptually construct. So which means anything that exists has to be, designated by the thought. So designated a creation, it is a creation, has no intrinsic reality. So now you can say, yes, I understand the concept of relations, nations, concept of the cause and effect relations. Maybe this we can understand, it's not really intrinsic in reality. But how about the color, sound, smell, taste? So this must have intrinsic reality. So then we go with the colors, how the color existing. Is color really exists by itself, independent from the eye sense power? There is no such color, independent from the eye sense power. There's no color independent from the light. There's no color independent from the space or the distance. There's no color independent from the form that that get the hit by the light. So there's something to light can hit on that, and then they bounce back to the sense power and create the reflections there, right? And that reflection itself is not color again, because color is not in eyeball. So color is not outside of the eyeball. So like, mirror image is not part of the glass, not mirror itself. It is not independent from the mirror itself. It is, reflection is not just, things that is, transfer from your face into the mirror. There is nothing. So when you try to understand what is the reflection is, what is the mirror image is, you cannot find that something physically landed on the mirror. There is no mirror image that could exist independent from the mirror. There is nothing that goes from your face into the mirror. So that reflection is not coming from anywhere, not going to anywhere. So therefore, that the form is a creation, dependent arising. It has no independent, intrinsic quality in there. So again, when you say this, the color, sound, smells is the outcome of the element. So outcome of the element is not in the element, the outer element, not in the inner element. So if you try to find that very outcome of the elements as a sound and smell and taste is not in the element. So not in the elements, and the element are not visible. And then the outcome of element can be seen, can be smelled, can be touched, can be heard. Right. So it's not really, so if you try to find, and there is no way you can really find in particular place, it's not locatable. in any outer element or inner element, not in sense powers. So yeah, these are just kind of assumptions. The primary substance does not exist, even on the level of worldly conventional truths. These statements clearly refute the assertion that in these traditions of the Chandrakirti, existence on the conventional level is defined purely in the terms of an existence from the perspective of the deluded cognitions. Similarly, as with all things imagined as real owing to illusions, mirage, and mirror image, and the like, are as real horse and elephant and real face. So mirror image like real face, illusion like real horse, mirage like a real water. So for example, these has no existence even according to the world. But conventionally, and people understand these are not real. So conventionally, we understand the mirage is not water, and the reflections mirror image is not a face, right? And the mirage is not water. Illusion is not, illusion elephant is not elephant. Dream elephant is not elephant. Namely, the conventional truth. So therefore, for something to exist on the conventional level, it must be established by valid cognitions. Now, although such conceived object of the deluded perceptions do not exist even on the conventional level, Chandrakirti does not hold the situations to be the same, when it comes to their appearing object. So that relates to everything that we, conceive or imagine through, our perceptions. There are 6 perceptions. So all the perceptions that we have always been mistaken with respect to the appearance. So we appears, unreal. So which means like a duplicate. So we are excited in those duplicate, right? Because the mind, the perceptions has the tendency to, to create the duplicate. Chandrakirti, convention levels, the Chandrakirti does not understand. And the perceptions of the 5 sense object of form, sound, and so on as existing by virtue of their own characteristics. So this is eye consciousness sees the color that exists by its own essence. Nose consciousness in its experience and kind of smelling the smell that exists independent from the nose consciousness itself, right? So and the tongue consciousness also experience the taste that is taste that independent from the tongue consciousness itself. So and then the air consciousness and also experience the sound that is independent. Maybe our kind of our way, maybe body actions when you listen to things, we just do that, we just go closer, and when you see things we try to see staring at it, right, with glass, without glass. So it all kind of there's some kind of indications that you are seeing something that is really independent from yourself. And when you listen, this is, oh, I heard you, means, we think we think the sound that is produced by others' mouth is really has touched to your air consciousness or air sense power. Because so sound that produced from others' mouth cannot be travel. It's not traveling. If it is a traveling, then you say each sound you closer and closer and you're saying your name and then coming towards you, right? So there is no such sound in the running and just calling your name. So this is how the consciousness, perceive the object. So therefore, every perceptions of the conventions are always been mistaken with respect to the appearance. Now, when we say that, with respect to the appearance, so is mistaken does not mean the perception itself is wrong, right? So it has perceived the actual object through through its own creations, through its own duplicate object. So which are experienced right now with our sensory cognitions is due to the contamination of ignorance. So why the eye consciousness, why the eye consciousness see the colors is something intrinsic, because eye consciousness influenced by the ignorance, strongly influenced or overpowered by the ignorance. So the eye consciousness see things independent. Therefore, insofar they're being deluded with respect to their appearing object is concerned, the only difference between our everyday perceptions tended by ignorance, on the one hand, that delusory perception, delusory perceptions of mirror image, echoes, and so on. On the other is the degree of subtleties. So furthermore, although the intrinsic existing of the blue and so on, as well as the reflections being real face, remain impossible. As a subtlety, so here the experiencing from the air consciousness experience the sound that intrinsically existing is, it's the influence by the misconceptions. That is subtlety. This mistaken is cannot be cognized by the conventional perception. Now, so another thing is that sound that this, like for example, the mirror image as a face is, so to understand that is mistaken and no need the wisdom realizing emptiness. So the conventional perception can understand the mirror image is not face, and the mirage is not water. So so color is not intrinsic. Color is not intrinsic, is not recognized or recognized by any conventional perceptions, because that is more subtle than the so mirror image as a face, illusion as a horse, right? So here the intrinsic exists in the blue and so on, as well as the reflections being real face remain impossible. Just as the reflection itself exists, likewise the blue and so on exist. Despite their lack of intrinsic existence, moreover, Chandrakirtis accept the reflection to be visible forms just like other external objects. So reflection is the visible and it's unreal. And so, so other visible forms just as other external objects like blue and orange, things like that. So later in that text, in fact, he speaks how mirror image produce sensory perceptions. This mode of understanding should be extended also to the example of magical illusions, in which the eyes perceived horse and elephant, as well as to echoes and so on. And this presentation is unique to the excellent system of the Chandrakirti. So, and according to mundane perceptions, mirror image is unreal, and the image of color and trees are real, according to mundane. So this, the trees is real, mirror image is unreal. Illusion as a horse is unreal, and horse is real. Right? This is according to mundane perceptions. Yes, this is, but horse is not intrinsic as the illusion horse. Horse is also not intrinsic as dream horse. So that is, and mundanely, there is no possible of cognize as even the real horse is not intrinsic. So for that, you need the noble and the Arya wisdom. So relating this presentation to the actual context, just as what is perceived by an eye afflicted with disease cannot invalidate the perceptions of those free of such defects. So it's comparing that, looking at a mirror image as a, mirror image, and then looking at the real color. So cannot invalidate the perception of those free from such defects. Likewise, the mind deprived of stainless wisdoms, lacking stainless wisdoms, cannot invalidate the pure, untainted mind. So given that the truth of suchness is not established by conventional cognitions, arising from other cannot be refuted if one remains only within the ordinary worldly perspective. So now this comparing that the mirror image is mundanely understood unreal, and the color, sound, smell is it's mundanely is real. So so in this way, to understand them in the color, sound, smell is not intrinsically, and you have to rely on wisdom realizing emptiness. So the mundane perception cannot decide, right? The color, sound, smell is not real. So mundane only understands something is not real, like a mirror image, illusion horse is not horse, mirage is not water. So this is the only, is limited. Now, so the point here is born from others. Things do not born from others. So now the question is, can this be understood by the mundane perceptions? It says no. So a bond from others is, as settled as a color, sound, smell, taste. So refuted, they remain only within the ordinary worldly perspective. It is negated on the ultimate level by accepting the vision of the Aryas. So without Arya wisdoms, and born from other cannot be refuted. So this is why, other than Pasangi school, all the Buddhist school accept, right? So medieval autonomous school, minor only school says, yes, they can understand things do not arise by themselves, but things do arise from others, right? So in view of this, yes. Hence the refutations of arising from others takes place with proviso, right? Proviso. Ultimately, in view of this, just as what is perceived by an eye afflicted by disease, such as the vision of the floating hair, and so on, cannot invalidate the perception of those free of such defects, and thus do not experience such false visions. So the eye consciousness also, with disease, eye conscious see things. Without disease, eye consciousness seeing things. So without disease, eye is more valid than the eye consciousness with disease, right? So like eye conscious seeing the floating hairs and then flying mosquitoes. So likewise, the mind of the ordinary persons tended by ignorance and deprived of or divorced from stainless, uncontaminated wisdoms cannot invalidate the pure mind that is untainted, not polluted, right, by ignorance. Hence, this negations of arising from others on the ultimate level cannot be invalidated by the worldly cognitions. So worldly cognition could not decide there is, there is some kind of a things that is born from other or not. So the worldly perceptions, uh, falls more, and there's a tendency to more believing, yes, things could born from others because the cause and effect are different, right? Seed and sprout are different. Milk and yogurts are different. So with that base, they likely to accept things can born from others. So when you understand the dependent arisings, everything is dependent arising, and then with that perspective, so this barley seed and sprout, yet you can see the difference in the color, difference in the form, but there is no possible the sprout that manifests is different from the seed. So milk is no different from the yogurt is no different from the milk. Milk is no different from the yogurt they turn into. Right? The person who is awake is no different from the person who is sleeping at night. So a person who is convicted as a criminal is no different from who is committing a crime. So relative understanding, more subtle level, and there is these cause and effect are no independent. When there is no independent, how can effect arises from others? So invalidate with worldly cognitions, even if one were to allow other arising to exist for the sake of argument, for the perspective of worldly cognitions, therefore the opponent is justifiably, a source, right? The source of immunement for the learned sublime one. So Lama Tsongkapha says, Chandrakirti can, smile on the Sotantika school's statement that there's a, in a product that born from others is real and it is intrinsic, because this is the seed and the sprout are different. Sprout is different from the seed, seed is different from the sprout, because there is the different colors. So then it says, in the morning you are wearing a t-shirt, in the evening you are wearing a coat. So maybe you must be different, because the morning I see you in t-shirt, in the evening I see you in the wearing coat. So that does not prove you are different from that morning person. So the seed has a size smaller and the color more black, and the sprout the manifest more green, right? And then it's physically taller than the seed. So you say, oh, now you see is too different. So if these two are different, and then yes, it is of course the sprout is born from others. So the Sutanika schools is like the seed and sprout. There is no seed that could understand or that could perceived as a different from the sprout. So there is no time they have been different. You cannot see the seed has been different in the shape, different in the color, different in the taste during the seed, during the sprout. During the sprout, there is no seed to be different, because during the sprout, seed is non-existence. During the seed, sprout is non-existence. So there is no, ultimate level. The seed, even if not physically, they're being different. So if you think conceptually, so by imagining, you see the different. So that does not prove, and conceptually distinct. It's not going to prove them are different. Is conceptually separate is the as a valid reasoning to prove them different, and your head and size of the head must be physically different, because this is how conceptually distinct, right? Your body and the weight, your body and size of your body, and leaf in the color of the leaf. So conceptually we are distinct the color from the leaf, but that does not prove, right? Color of the leaf is different from the leaf. So the four chronology possibility of arising, there is no arising by itself, there is no arising from others. Therefore, there is no arising from both, and without cause is impossible. So this is why arising has no intrinsic quality. And then again, we think, if you're thinking the arising as a future, the coming, right? So if you think arising the future as a coming, if that is intrinsic, and there must be something in that future to be coming. If there is something in that future, it is already formed, then how can that be futures? So this is why there is no such, such thing as the arising that could intrinsically establish, intrinsically exist. So the arising is, conceptually, therefore, going to next life is also conceptual. Coming from the past life is the conceptual. So there is no intrinsic self that coming from the past. There is no intrinsic self that are going to the next life. Yeah. Relation to, yeah. I think. Yeah, so nature of the each of the two truths. So it's 4:00. Any questions? Any question? Okay. There are no questions. Chanju simjo rinpoche, ma jeba na geji, geba nyamba meba, kone kondo pewarisho, tonye tawa rinpoche, ma jeba na geji, geba nyamba meba ya, kone kondo pewarisho. Pama simjen tamjen, deda denjuji, nyenro tamje tata tongwa, chanju simbo kanda sushu, deda gunju, molong jubjurushi, kare rawe kowe shingozo, penda dewa mamlun jume, jere singwa, tenzin jazu yi shabe, sire badu tenjuruji.
May the precious Bodhi mind act upon arise and grow. May the whole have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness act upon arise and grow. May the whole have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all father and mother sentient beings fall happiness. May all lower worlds be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness, more powerful eternity begins in yourself. Remain in this world until some sort of end.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.